you say something analogous about local, which I think will be interesting for our students. So again, we're talking about the Ithaca response, which is kind of this, alternative agriculture movement, and a lot of that has this kind of local urge or local component. You talked a little bit just now about more intentional eating, about getting to know your food system, about connection. So there's a sense in which doing it locally, getting to know your farmer, going to the farmer's market, seeing where things are grown and so forth, does establish those kinds of connections that you seem to prefer. But on the other hand, at least in your book, your earlier book, you're suggesting that environmentally it may not always, at least not always, be the right thing to do, because you can, with the economies of scale involved, you can get a lot more for your food dollar, even if you're buying stuff from far away.
So I think the important point here is that local sometimes makes a lot of sense. And when
Yeah.
it does, I think we should support it. I mean, if we're growing the kind of foods that should be grown locally, that do well in our local environment, there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't, buy that at the farmer's market and support that local system.
Okay.
My argument in Just Food is really against a kind of comprehensive locavore ethic that argues that we should be getting all of our food, in a 50-mile radius or a 100-mile radius. To me, I think you will run into real problems in terms of not just ecological problems, but ultimately human health problems. I mean, where I live, if I ate within a 50-mile radius of where I live, it would be overwhelmingly detrimental to my health. We don't have the kind of diversity
Right.
that we have in other parts of the country.
Yeah.
So it's really a warning against a kind of locavore ideology that kind of immediately castigates a certain product because it comes from the other side of the world. I try to show that food that travels from the other side of the world can be more efficient and it can be healthy for us. There's no reason why we should reject it. And actually, if we were growing those foods in our backyard, it would be a real problem because we don't have the environment to support it. And if you manipulated the environment to support growing, bananas in Texas, the number of inputs would be incredibly wasteful.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
But what about somebody who says, look, you don't need to eat bananas year-round at all. In fact, you may not need to eat bananas in general. If you're living in Texas, you should stick with what you can get in Texas.
Yeah, so I would be eating, I mean, in New York, you'd be eating a lot of you'd be drinking a lot of grape juice.
Yeah,
and
there's some good
apple.
wine up here. And
Yeah, so, I mean, I hear that all the time,
Yeah.
and I guess my thought is I certainly, as a modern consumer, don't really want to eat that way. I think the healthiest thing we can do as eaters is to eat a diverse diet. And
Okay.
the more diversity we can incorporate into our diet, the better. So I love the fact that I can walk into Whole Foods or whatever grocery store and buy fresh produce from all over the world. I think it's good for me, and I'm probably pretty good for farmers somewhere on some level that I'm buying their produce. So, I mean, I think that is just something that people really need to think through. It's very easy to say, well, I'm not going to eat out of season, but I don't know if that's necessarily the right thing to do to optimize your health. And by eating out of seasons, if you're eating food that's grown in season somewhere else, you're certainly helping people who are growing that food somewhere else. And I think that really highlights the Ithaca effect.
Yeah.
It's easy for that to blend into a kind of solipsism and in a weird way a kind of community isolationism that I find sometimes to be a little oppressive.
Mm-hmm.
And so really this just kind of comes back to striking a balance. I go to my farmer's market all the time and I buy food in season produced locally all the time. That just makes sense to do that. Yeah. And then when I want to eat different kinds of food, I buy from all over the world, I guess. Yeah. So to me, again, it kind of comes back to making decisions to buy just plants over animals. That is, I think, where the real environmental gains are coming rather than from buying locally.
I guess the other worry there is just, I share the concern about tribalism or something where, we only buy stuff from around here and we want all our dollars to stay here or something like that. But I guess there is the worry that the minute that you go global, a lot of your food dollars being siphoned off by the executives and the shareholders and the corporate blah, 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 and not going to the farmer in Guatemala at all.
Absolutely, very good point. And I think that's something that really needs to be a major focus of the food movement. I would love, and there have been in some instances for coffee, for example.
Yeah, fair trade, yeah.
Well, no, way beyond fair trade. I mean, I
Okay.
think there are some real problems with fair trade, but there are some co-ops that actually are thoroughly cutting out all these areas where the farmer is not getting the money, and
Hmm.
50% of the profits are going to the farmer. So I would love to see programs developed where we end up getting our produce from different parts of the world where these products are efficiently grown, and um, programs that actually ensure that farmers get 50% of the cost.
Yeah.
And so I don't see any reason why those kind of programs couldn't be pursued. And in some cases, they are on micro levels. There's some really interesting connections between, believe it or not, like Chinatown in New York and the restaurants in Chinatown in New York. They get a lot of their Asian produce from farms in Honduras, of all places, and they contract directly with these farmers to grow specifically what they want, and the majority of that profit goes back to the farmers. And
Yeah.
so I think you can have globalization while at the same time ensuring that those who are producing our food are being paid um, justly for the food that they're producing. But I think you raise an excellent area for reform.
Hmm.
But if you focus only on local, you're not going to be looking at that area very carefully.